Hey everybody, welcome back to BK's Bullets. Today we're going to talk Marvels by Alex Ross and Kurt Busiek. Hey everybody, welcome back to BK's Bullets. As always, I'm your host, Brent FINALLY. We're going to be talking about Marvels today. I have never read this until now. Can you believe it? But before we get started, I'd like to ask you to do one thing, and that would be please subscribe. It helps the channel grow, helps us get more views, more recognition, and don't forget to hit that like button if you like these types of videos. But let's get into Marvels. Let's get into the review. So, Marvels, what is it? Well, you know what? I've said in a couple of videos that I don't think Marvel has an evergreen. I think I found it. I think this is it. I've never read this. This has been out for, I don't know, 25 years or something like that. It's pretty astounding that I haven't read this up until now. I'm more of a DC guy, but I love Alex Ross, and I was finally like, you know what? Let me go get myself a copy of Marvels and pick it up. And boy, am I glad I did. This is a really fantastic book, you guys. Why does no one talk about Marvels in the way that they talk about Kingdom Come, right? So, Alex Ross, he's the main guy on this book. The reason for coming, I guess you would. For any comic book, your reasons may vary. Sometimes it's a story, but when Alex Ross is on a book with this painted artwork, painted covers, painted interiors, does the whole thing. This was his first big work for mainstream comic books. I think before this, he said in interviews, I'm a subscriber to his YouTube channel, where he does breakdowns or highlights some of his art that he's working on nowadays. It's kind of cool. Sometimes there's a retrospective on Marvels or Kingdom Come, stuff like that. He said he did like a Terminator book before this and then jumped in with this with Kurt Busiek, or Busiek. I'm not sure how you pronounce it, so sorry, Kurt. Anyways, that's not to talk about Kurt. We will talk about Kurt in a little bit. So let's talk about Alex Ross a little bit first. So he is a painted artist. He's mostly doing covers nowadays for Marvel. He's doing a bunch for Incredible Hulk. You've seen him do covers for Grant Morrison's Batman, R.I.P. run. But the real strength of Alex Ross, I believe, is his storytelling. He brings a classic pastiche to his work. The stuff in here with Marvels is, he's always been a painted artist. He did one issue with Kingdom Come Superman, like a special many years ago, where he only did the pencils, and those are astounding. Like it was astounding. So he's just a great artist all around. In this, it's all painted artwork. But he became really famous when he teamed up with Mark Waid for Kingdom Come, which was a couple years after Marvels. This is the future storyline where you have Superman fighting Shazam. You got old Batman in armor. This is where the Wonder Woman 1984 Golden Eagle armor came from. If you see Wonder Woman right here, you see her butt there. But yeah, she's got the golden armor. Basically, they ripped it out of this book. And so this art in Kingdom Come is like classic Alex Ross. This is his style. This is where he is now. Like, not much has changed in his art style from Kingdom Come. Marvels is a bit rougher, I think. It's a bit rougher. But still talking about Alex Ross, you want to read more of his stuff. He did a lot of the conceptual work and storytelling and plotting for Earth X, which is the first of this big series he did for Marvel. I think this came after Kingdom Come. I picked these up a long time ago from Barnes & Noble. I think when I was like in late middle school, early high school. There's Earth X. This is all one volume. All these are in like a big omnibus now. These are old trades, so you might not be able to find these. Then there was a two-part Paradise X, which features that same storyline. And he's doing all the covers in here. The interiors on this series is done by Doug Braithwaite, and then followed up by Paradise X. So there's like 12 issues of Universe X, 12 issues of Paradise X, and I'm not sure how long Marvel's was, entire series. 12 issues here, but for whatever reason in Earth and Paradise, I think there were, or Paradise and Universe, there was like specials that are collected. That's why there are 2 volumes trades. And then most recently, he's done the Justice series, which is, I think, almost 10 years old by now. Because it came out when I was in college as well. I bought the single issues. This is the deluxe edition. I've got a overview and a review of this on the channel, so you can go check that out. Interiors here, interestingly enough, are done by his buddy, or frequent collaborator at that point, with Doug Braithwaite, who did all the interiors for Universe X. So in Universe X, Alex Ross helped come up with the concept and did all the covers. Meanwhile, Doug Braithwaite does the pencils inside. And Doug Braithwaite is a great artist in his own right, but since he's got a more realistic style and things like that, it goes well with Alex Ross's covers and pastiche. It all blends together perfectly. On Justice, and I go through all this in the videos too, but quickly, Braithwaite does the pencils, and then Alex Ross came in and painted over it. So there's an image where Jim Lee did a Batman Superman thing, and Alex Ross painted over it. This is kind of that same idea. So you got Doug Braithwaite pencils, Alex Ross paints over it. It's a beautiful, beautiful book, and they kind of break it down in the back here in the deluxe edition of just how, like, this is how Braithwaite looks like on his own. And then you add Alex Ross on top of that, and it's like, you know, adding chocolate to peanut butter. Beautiful, wonderful, tastes great together. So I'm an Alex Ross fan. I've got Rough Justice over there. I have the Alex Ross sketchbook from 2020. I got the video of that on the channel as well. So big Alex Ross fan. I got the Alex Ross Batman Black and White. I'm looking at the statue. So, but I can't believe I've never read this. This book was so good. I spent 6 minutes talking about Alex Ross and what a huge fan I am, but I haven't read Marvels. Brent, you're such a hypocrite. But, man, oh man, was this a good read. This is a really good read. So, in here, this is the trade paperback edition, the remastered edition. I don't know what the remastered version is. They don't really describe it, if the art was restored from the original paintings or anything like that. It really looks, and I kind of did some comparisons online to see if there was any articles about it. There wasn't really. I think that most I found was maybe one picture where it was like a side-by-side, and the colors have been brightened up a little bit. So a remastered edition, maybe, maybe not. But his art style in here is a little bit rougher than Kingdom Come. Like, I don't know if he's doing watercolors here versus like oils or gouache, I think he was using on the YouTube stuff that I was watching at the time. But anyway, it's a little bit rougher. It's not quite as refined. It's still fantastic, still great. And there's a lot of images in here that you have seen before with Marvel promoting their stuff that are just breathtaking renditions of the classic versions of these characters. And then to see them put into context with the book was just another thing entirely. So what is Marvels, Brent? You've talked 8 minutes now and you haven't told us what the fuck Marvel is about. Well, Marvels is a tale through the years of the beginning of the Marvel Universe through the 70s, basically, through one man's eye, Phil Sheldon. And he is a photographer, not unlike Peter Parker, except that he's significantly older. So issue 0 is like a short little half issue. You meet all the characters. Or you meet the Human Torch, rather. The original Human Torch, the android Human Torch, who was the Torch in like the 1940s and stuff. Marvel Comics #1 features this guy on the cover. I think Namor followed soon after. So it's touching on that era of Marvel Comics before Stan Lee came in and took over everything, right? So they bring that history into the Marvel Universe. Then we get to issue #1. We meet Phil Sheldon. We meet who we think is a young J. Jonah Jameson. Even though I don't think they even call him out by name. He's called out in later issues when he's got the mustache and stuff. But young Jameson, he's over here on the left. I don't think they really call him Jonah or anything. It just looks so much like J. Jonah Jameson. I was like, that's got to be young Triple J, right? Turns out it was. But the first issue deals with the 1940s, Human Torch, Namor, Captain America comes in at the very end, and the world's reaction to these heroes, and specifically our character's reaction to them. Phil Sheldon, he's our point of view man. He kind of puts his life on hold because he gets scared. Namor attacks, the Human Torch goes after him. I don't know if this is pulled from a Marvel comic. It must be. Most of this stuff, at least the later stuff, is the Silver Age, Stan and Jack, Fantastic Four, Ditko, Spider-Man, that kind of stuff. Death of Gwen Stacy's featured in here later in issues. And all that stuff is pulled straight from the comics. So it's a reference-heavy book. In fact, there are references in the back to every scene that happens and what issue they pulled it from. So I should probably check, but I believe, if I had to guess, based on everything else, this happened in a 1940 story. But he experiences this. It terrifies the shit out of him. And Phil puts his life on hold to go to war, basically, to be a war photographer. And he meets, he has a beautiful girlfriend and doesn't want to marry her. He's scared. And then after this attack, he realizes that life's too short. I need to stop this. Because he thinks, oh, it'll die down. All the superhero stuff will die down. And that water attack makes him realize that it's not. So he begins his life. And then issue 1 ends with this beautiful double-page spread of the invaders attacking the Nazis. And then issue 2 jumps ahead like 20 years into the 1960s, early 1960s, where you have the beginning of the X-Men and the Fantastic Four. And there was a really, issues 2 and 3 are some of the best issues I've read in a long time. They were phenomenal. Phenomenal. So this is where we're going to talk about Kurt Busiek. He's done Marvels, obviously. He did a run with George Perez on Avengers. I think the most recent thing that I've read by him is the Camelot Falls arc in Superman, which is the post, 1 year or the 1 year later storyline, things like that, which is still that was 10 years ago. Brent, come on, read something newer. But you're right. So Kurt Busiek and Alex Ross also teamed up to do Astro City, which I think was at Wildstorm or Vertigo for a while. Over at DC Comics, it was like their kind of alternate superhero universe. I've read some of that. Alex Ross was doing the covers for a while. I don't know if he's still involved in it, or even if the series is still going. But that's kind of like an alternate world where they take the iconography of all of our classic superheroes and then tweak them a little bit into their own universe. So that exists out there. So that's Kurt Busiek. He's written a whole bunch of other stuff as well, I'm sure. But those are the highlights. But man, Marvel's, this was so good. Issue 2, you got stuff with the Fantastic Four. You got Giant Man showing up here. And all this stuff, what makes it tie it all together into one continuous storyline is this point of view with Phil Sheldon, this photographer. He's seeing all these things. He's in awe. He's in wonder. And at the same time, he's human because he gets caught up in this anti-mutant hysteria in issue 2. And it isn't until he realizes that they're just kids and he finds an abandoned mutant in his basement that his girls brought home that he regrets taking part in this hysteria. Like, he throws a brick at Cyclops' face and it hits Iceman in the head and breaks a chunk off of him. And Cyclops says they're not worth it and leaves. As the better man that Cyclops is than Phil Sheldon at that point. And that strikes Phil. He's like, oh, what did he say? They're not worth it? Like, why are we not worth it? And he starts to examine himself inside, especially when this mutant girl shows up in his basement to feel guilty about it and goes and tries to solve it. He's looking for a solution until it's too late, like real life, instead of these books where you actually solve problems. Like real life, sometimes problems can't remain solved by one person. Really, really an incredibly moving issue. You got the appearance of the Sentinels in here. Really, really fantastic issue. And then this kind of escalates in number 3, where you have this whole Galactus thing, where Galactus invades New York, right? And this starts off really great with these two-page spreads with these panels here, but you kind of got the artwork spreading across both pages. Wonderful, wonderful layouts by Alex Ross. Art is beautiful. And then as Galactus shows up, every other page is this ginormous splash page of something magnificent and wondrous happening. At the same time, you have the eye story of the people on the ground, or Phil. And then eventually Phil goes, what am I doing here? My family is over in the suburbs of New York City, and I'm ignoring them instead of watching this. And if this is the end of the world, I'd rather be over there. So eventually you got the contrast of these big things going on. I've never seen this image before. This is wonderful. These big things going on as Phil is walking home because everybody's abandoned their cars in the tunnel and stuff like that. And he's going to be with his family. And that was just the juxtaposition of these two images, of this story versus the big cosmic stuff. So often when we read superhero comic books, we see only the left-hand side of the page, right? All the cosmic stuff, all the superhero stuff, and we forget the human side. And that's what makes good superhero comics, is when you take those two things and you tie them together and they become one. And just phenomenal. Look at this. This is just awesome. Ugh. I can't believe I have not read this. This is so astonishing. Like, man, this is such a marvel. Pun intended. I did that on purpose, yes. But, so he takes that and realizes that, yes, they're here, and after this Galactus thing, Phil realizes, like, you know, we shit on these heroes all the time. They save us one day and we hate them the next day. They save the world and everybody's crapping on the Avengers, you know, or the Fantastic Four, especially Spider-Man. He goes and tries to clear Spider-Man of Captain Stacy's murder, and then ends up witnessing Gwen Stacy's murder on the bridge. And it breaks his heart. And where it goes from there, I'm not going to tell you because you need to read it. And I told you a lot. Only because to say that it was really good. The hooks are there. Phil Sheldon, a photographer, if you told me I wouldn't be interested in that, I'd have believed you. But after reading this book is fantastic. So this needs to be Marvel's evergreen. They need to do something with this. More than they have. Just reprinting the trades, fine. I mean, they don't really have an animated series program, but if they wanted to make a Marvel's TV show on Disney Plus that was built around the different events of all the 18, 20 movies that they've released at this point in the MCU, and just reframed it through these eyes, it would be... if they got Kurt Busiek to come on, it'd be a dream. You know, or they took his cues and really made it like not a faithful adaptation because they don't have the X-Men stuff in the Marvel Cinematic Universe yet, but man, they could really do something with this, just tying it to the eyes of this human character who has these battles in his conscience about, you know, he hates mutants and then realizes he shouldn't. He loves the heroes and then realizes he's wondering why the world hates them so much. And then realizes that maybe they're not to be such idols and really they're human after all at the very end. Is just a heartbreaking story, but it is so good, you guys. If you have not read Marvels, go pick it up. It's out there. It's in trade. The Remastered Edition is here. They just did release the 4 issues of Marvel's Annotated. I think that's being collected as well, where there's like, I think the entire script is in the back there. There might be a deluxe edition of that coming out, but however you want to read this, do yourself a favor and read it. This is fantastic. This is the best book I've read all year in 2021 so far. So take that to the bank. Read Marvels. Come back. Let me know down below what you thought of it. Don't forget to like, comment, share, subscribe, all that stuff. Thank you guys for watching. We will see you guys next time in the Funny Pages.